To name some of these pressures and risks, let's look at some of the key features and how they interact with young people's brains. And I am such a fan of talking about the brain, so I'm going to nerd out a little bit. But essentially, a lot of the features involved in social media have been designed particularly in place to make people engage with them. And this isn't particularly focused on making a child and teen whose brain's still developing in all these incredible, beautiful ways to engage. It's no, making an adult, fully formed brain, which we have full control over our well, quite good control over our emotions, quite good control over impulses as well, and a more balanced ability to manage our dopamine. These these features are aimed at us to make us engage. So I always go, how much more of an impact is it going to have on a young person who's still developing those areas, which we'll go into next. But the features are things such as streaks, things such as likes, the follows, the idea of the endless scroll or the automated videos that just play next, they keep on looping. It's that idea of fear of missing out and the algorithm kind of digging into that, going, I want people to feel that little bit of panic. I want people to feel that because that's how people engage. And it's one of those things, it's all about engagement, it's all about money. That's why these things exist. So, particularly the endless scroll. The idea of the endless scroll actually directly relates to something called dopamine within our brain, and it clicks over to where our brain goes, I'm getting a reward and something satisfactory out of this. I'm getting a new video that's exciting, it's different, and I'm engaged. And it hits the dopamine again with the next video, and we're going, wow, I'm engaged. And for a young person, their dopamine actually looks very, very different to adult dopamine. Because in periods of adolescence, it's all about intense learning. And the learning centers of a young person's brain is actually directly related to where dopamine is. So if they're increased learning, increased dopamine. So that's why for young people, the endless scroll can be so dangerous because it's making them stay engaged, want more. I need to keep consuming media to keep the dopamine happening. But there's also those algorithms that are set up to learn about young people or learn about everyone, but particularly for young people, learn about who they are, learn about what they engage with, who they engage with, what information they're going to watch, either in a positive way or a negative way, because the algorithm does not care. As long as someone's engaging, it's doing its job, it's making money. So let's go into young people's brains. And I'm going to break this down a little bit into some colors that can help in relation to social media and different stages of brain development. What I want to name off the bat is that throughout our lives, there's no such thing as this level of brain development is great and good, and this one is not. It's all about throughout our lives, our brains developing in different ways to meet our needs in that moment. And that's why certain parts of our brain are maybe more limited, and why some things are far more complex, and why some things might be heightened. It's all about survival, it's all about learning, it's all about meeting our needs in that moment to grow and develop into healthy human beings. And there's something really incredible that happens, particularly between the ages of 0 to 10 and 10 to kind of 14 and 15 and 17 and in that adolescent brain. So in regards to brains, there are two main areas where our brains particularly go through big reshaping and relearning when they're the most plastic. It's related to this thing called neuroplasticity. So the first big part of our developing brain for young people is that 0 to 10, the infancy, where they're learning all these things about the world. And so their brain is going, okay, I am a sponge right now. I am going to take in all of this information because I need to know it. And the second big, sponge moment, the second big place of plasticity is actually within adolescence, which is 10 to 25, where it's the second wave of where our brain is really developing for young people. So in relation to social media particularly, that's why I've chosen these particular parts of reward seeking, impulse control, emotional stability, peer pressure and approval, self-regulation and risk assessment. That's why I focused on these, because this relates to social media and the delay and those ideas of protection. But yeah, just because these are highlighted, please don't kind of walk away going, okay, my 10 to 14-year-old or my 15 to 17-year-old, their brain is struggling. That's not the case. They're in an intense phase of learning, and there's reasons why all of these things are peaking, and it has to do with their development. It allows them to learn in healthy ways. And I always go, intense learning, if they're building, it's about the scaffolds that we've got in place to protect that learning, to help them grow high and tall, and to not, I guess, risk their foundations crumbling. But everyone learns differently. Everyone's brain develops at a different time. This is just a generalization based on neuroscience and developmental psychology. But if we're to look at it with reward seeking, which is that whole idea of dopamine, it's that whole idea of risk reward. This is something that, especially over adolescence, is incredibly important and vital to development, because that is how young people learn. It's that idea of I'm going to try something, I'm going to fail, and I'm going to learn about what is the correct outcome. So it's that idea of learning through failure, the risk and reward, which is why they seek the reward. They're going, yes, I've figured this out. I have learned something. The brain is primed for that in that moment. It's so important because we want them to learn and to have their own successes. This reward area of the brain, the dopamine's at its peak between the age of 10 to 14. From the age of 15 to 17, it's still high, but it's declining. And you can relate that a lot to social media. Why are young people maybe staying online? If we're thinking about dopamine algorithms, 10 to 14-year-old, it's at its peak. They're incredibly vulnerable there. Impulse control for young people kind of improves as they age. They get more mature and they keep learning how to control their impulses. They keep learning that idea of self-regulation. Emotional stability is the same, that idea of if they're faced with some sort of stimulus, something that's meant to anger them, are they able to kind of control their emotions and manage them in that moment, even if it's seen online? Peer pressure and approval is at its peak between the ages of 10 to 14, which is where young people really rely on learning about their peers. And the reason why, because I was really curious about this, if we're looking at why isn't it the case with 0 to 10-year-olds, it's because they're learning and really relying on generally their family or who's raising them. And then they start getting older, they start developing deep friendships, and they start relying on their friendships. But one thing to note here is it doesn't mean that carer influence isn't important, and it's actually they value that at its peak as well during adolescence in regards to psychology. So it's just as important, but there is a rise in that peer pressure and approval and wanting to fit in and wanting to feel a part of society, and that is a natural need that every human being has. But it does decrease slowly as people are less influenced of going, okay, my peer's doing it, so I'm feeling that pressure, I have to do it too, so I can fit in. As people get older, they develop that more autonomy and that idea of I'm developing my identity and it's separate to my friends. Self-regulation, very similar to emotional stability, it raises with age, and then risk assessment abilities. So for very young people, it is limited. They're not meant to risk assess, they're just meant to survive. 10 to 14-year-olds, it's developing because they're going, well, I'm learning to risk assess. My prefrontal cortex, the front part of the brain, they're just learning how to think critically. They're just learning how to look at a situation and decide if it's safe or not, and decide how can I be safe with all the knowledge that I have in response to this. So that's developing all throughout 10 to 14. 15 to 17, it's definitely improving. They're able to do it well with practice. And then 18 to 25, it's considered mature and the same as adults. So I guess in regards to psychology, that is a little bit about the brain. And I'm sure you can make your own assumptions here about how that relates to social media and the social media ban age sitting at 16, because it's right in that sweet spot of things are getting better. Things are improving. But it's also recognizing, I guess, those parts at the start of why is social media and social connection so important to people under 16? Let's think about that connection and that core part of their brain that's going, I want connection and approval, and I need my peers, and I want to be connected with this. It's about the reward seeking, the dopamine going, it's fun. I'm engaged with it. It's exciting. Yeah, because that's fitting a developmental milestone that they need to have in that moment for healthy development. So yeah, I found it really fascinating to look at the interplay between, yeah, the brain and social media.
I think
So hopefully
what you've
you do too.
described there, Hannah, is what you've described really well there is, I guess, this kind of perfect storm of brain
Mm,
development for the negative components of
yep,
social media. It really is. And what you can see is that this delay is, how do we give these kids' brains a chance to catch up
yep.
and be able to kind of, navigate the issues of that negative side of social media? So really, I can see the passion and I love it. And I think you've explained that really well. Thank you.
No, of course. Like I said, I love nerding out on the brain, and
Yeah.
that's something that really helped me kind of understand the whole idea of the 16, because I know when I first heard about it personally, I was kind of going, well, I don't know what I feel about this because I am all for protection of young people, but I also know the vital role technology plays in young people's life. So that really helped me conceptualize, okay, why was 16 chosen? Yeah, if we think about it in regards to development, it makes sense.